Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 215 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me, as always, is the greatest hostess in the known universe, Aaron Paulette. Aaron, how are you doing?
I don't understand why you keep doing this. I mean, dear readers, I do not ask for this. Readers, I'm still thinking like a blog post. Listeners, audience, I don't ask him to butter my butt. I don't require this. He just decides to do it because it's fun, and every time he pumps me up, I am mildly to moderately embarrassed.
And now, listeners, you know why I do it.
How am I doing? I got a lot of mundane stuff going on in my life that's of interest to me, but I kind of doubt anyone else cares. But then I've always been surprised at what people want to know about me. So, okay, here's this. I have really gotten addicted to watching videos about China's current political economic situation. And I got into them. I just sort of stumbled upon them because I'm a prepper, and there was a video about, why I had to flee China, and I investigated. And so there's this guy, he goes by the name of Laowai86, and he lived in China for 10 years, like 2008 to 2018, and that was during the golden period of China before Xi Jinping, I'm horrible with names, back when China was basically capitalist in all but name, and he moved there, and he really loved the people, and he ran a little business from home teaching English to people. He's now fluent in Chinese, and I'm not going to say he completely went native, but he married a Chinese woman, he has a wife. Of course, he has a child is what I meant. And he bought a house, and he was really trying to integrate into the country. And he was not a big proponent of the government, but he really loved the Chinese people. And now with this, with Xi Jinping, things have turned. And I'm trying not to go down into a particular rabbit hole, but, Jinping is really not as capitalist as some of the others, and so things started to get worse, and things started turning against foreigners, and this guy came to the attention of various authorities, and at one point he got a call from someone saying, hey, the government is looking for you, and it's more than one branch. There's the local police, and then there's the army, and then there's something else. And you got to get out now. And he fled to Hong Kong, and eventually his wife got out as well, and they met at the airport. And he managed to get to the United States because his daughter has dual citizenship and his wife has a green card, and of course is married to an American citizen. And so he got out, and he got out in 2018. Yeah,
oh boy, that's a nail biter right there.
Yeah, and then of course we had COVID and the lockdown, and now it's, and like I said, he was a really big proponent of Chinese people and the culture. He wasn't a fan of the government, but he self-censored for practical reasons. But now that he's out of the country and he got chased out, it's just like, okay, now it's on. And he's bad-mouthing them. And it's just interesting because, well, I want to know more about China, but I don't want to go through a really dry political discussion. And this guy isn't a politician, so he talks to me using normal language. But because he lived there for 10 years and is fluent, he really understands the people and the culture, and so he can put it in terms I can understand. It's really fascinating. He does videos like 10 to 15 minutes long, maybe 20, and it's just, oh wow, I'm learning so much, and it's really fascinating. And in fact, I linked about 4 of them on the most recent Blue Collar Prepping blog, because that story of how things got worse and he escaped and his wife escaped and things like that, it really resonated with me with all the stories I've heard, including from my own family, of escaping the Nazis in the 1940s. And I showed it to David, who is also Jewish, and it's like, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, that's really uncomfortable. So through prepping, I got into watching this channel, and it's just like, okay, this is fascinating, both because it's informative and it's like watching a train wreck, geopolitically speaking, in real time. So that's what I've been doing. I've just been binging, and this guy puts out videos at least once a week, if not more often. I'm never going to get through the back catalog, but it's really an interesting insight into what's going on.
Well,
so that's what's up with me.
Well, that's super cool. Yeah, make sure you link that in the show notes, because people might want to track that down. That's especially getting out at 2018. Like, there's no way he could have known, but oh my god, wow, yeah. Yeah, I have done much less. I've done, this is my second podcast of the day. Ryan and I recorded Handgun Radio this morning because we were supposed to do it on Saturday morning, and just as we were about to start the show, he just disappeared, and he heard a loud explosion outside his door and found at the bottom of a telephone pole a dead squirrel. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm guessing it fried itself and blew a transformer?
You're grounded. Yeah, that used to happen a lot at my house. I don't know what the heck's changed, because it's been almost 10 years since a squirrel's blown up in front of my house. But when it happens, it's spectacular. The pole in front of my house specifically has they call it a lightning break. I don't know if that's the standard industry term, but it's a giant fuse that so that if lightning hits either the pole or the wires, it will blow out that fuse instead of dumping huge amounts of electricity through my breaker box and all of my electronics. And so, it's a nice little sacrificial fuse. But ever so often, squirrels decide to climb on it, and when the negative end touches the positive end, there's a lot of resistance in a squirrel, and it can be quite explosive. Like literally stuff hanging from the wires type explosive.
Ew.
Yeah.
I mean, it was funny, and then you got graphic, and you ruined it. It's like you ruin everything.
I mean, I've got some pretty black humor, and I'm a biologist, so your squirrel actually like detonating like a first-person shooter video game from the 90s. Well, we got a bunch of segments and a bunch of news, so.
Well, yeah, but don't I have to ask you how you're doing?
Oh yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah, I just did a bunch of podcasts today, and my daughter has been doing really, really well, and so it was time for that to end today.
Oh dear.
I won't even get into it, but it was just it was a cranky, drama-filled day, and so we went over to some friend's house, and our friend's daughter, who's her age, they've been like, they were actually hanging out like one day. Their parents had to go do some stuff, and so they dumped the kids off with us, and like we had a great day, and it was awesome and all that, and like it's one of those like, did they fight? Did they get it? No, not at all. And then today, like, just I'll not get into details, but my daughter just got started off with cranky, and I don't think she ate mostly garbage all day, so she didn't have any good food in her stomach, so she probably wasn't feeling too great. So there was a lot of disagreement, and I don't know, the other girl was also seemed to be a little bit on the crabby side, so it was just drama. Drama. Finally, I'm just like, early bedtime, and it worked. We're reading Monster Hunter Legion now. My daughter, this is actually the book that got my daughter to want to read the Monster Hunter series, because we were reading The Hobbit, and I was laughing to her and telling her about management from the Monster Hunter series. And I won't go too deep for those that is spoiler, but I'll just say The Hobbit and management, and that's all you need to know. And she thought that was so funny that she wanted to read the series. And so now she's super duper excited that we're in Monster Hunter Legion, where management is introduced. So we read that for a little bit, and she just conked the hell out. And so, and then I made some Nigella seed vodka, because I read some junk science studies on the internet that said that it can cure AIDS. Literally, like there was literally a study on PubMed that said that Nigella seeds extracted in alcohol has been shown therapeutic results in AIDS patients, and there was like 3 AIDS patients in the study. It's total junk science. And I just went, I got a bunch of Nigella seeds. They're tasty. Let's and I got some vodka. Let's make this happen. And so I just bottled up the Nigella seed vodka. And it's very subtle. It's not like black pepper. Black pepper, there's compounds in pepper that clearly have a very strong affinity to alcohol, and it is both strong and not exactly like you would expect with pepper, because these are compounds that don't extract as easily in your mouth when you're eating something that has pepper in it. And so, yeah, this one, it's just very lightly Nigella seeds, but I made myself a martini and it's delicious. And congratulations, I don't have AIDS.
Well, I am certainly relieved to hear that, as I'm sure the rest of our audience is as well.
It is.
And by the way, I fear for your safety and or your sanity when your daughter hits puberty.
I don't think you need to fear about my safety or my sanity, because I don't think I'll live through it. I mean, it'll just be over, and it'll probably be so sudden and catastrophic that like I won't even know that I'm dead. It's like, as I say, I always tell everybody, like, if you get mice in your house, just get the old snap traps, which by the way were invented by Hiram Maxim. Get those. Don't live trap them. Don't glue trap them. Definitely don't poison them. Like, all of those things are far crueler to the mouse than you could think. I won't go into details, but I could document on why all of those things are far, far worse for the mouse's house. Get yourself a snap trap. Put some peanut butter on it, put it in a corner where you see mouse droppings, and pretty soon you won't have a mouse problem. But either way, without getting into gruesome detail, doing a postmortem on the mice, it is very clear that the mouse does not know it's dead. It got killed so cleanly and rapidly that it was just eating some peanut butter and going, "Oh, I'm so lucky to have found this peanut butter." And then, "I'm in Mouse Valhalla." But yes, that will be how puberty hits in my house.
Have you seen the picture of the quote unquote better mousetrap that uses a gun?
Oh yes, I have.
The subtitle something like, "This is the most American thing I've ever sseen."
Yeah. It might even be English, because I think I remember correctly. It's like a flintlock or a cap lock, wasn't it? I
thought it was a revolver.
Okay, this might be a different one. Like, I think there was a legit mousetrap that had like a blank loaded black powder gun, like very, very short barreled, almost like a miniature cannon mortar. That was set up to the trigger on that, and it would touch off, and the concussion and fire from the black powder would dispatch the mouse.
Okay, it's definitely a revolver. It says 1882, so I'm not entirely sure if this is cap and ball. Oh, it kind of looks that way.
It's definitely a cap and ball. You can see the nipples. I knew you'd laugh at that.
I have simple tastes.
Yes, it is clearly an open top cap and ball revolver. And that rat has got a very perturbed look on his face. It is a hand drawing. But given that it's a cap and ball revolver, it probably is American.
Fun times.
Fun times. All right, time to put the serious face on. Unfortunately,
switch from lion face to lemon face.
Yes, lion face to lemon face. I mean, but also at the same time, we can also put a little bit of like point and laugh at Justin Trudeau for all of his obnoxious behavior and stripping Canadians of their gun rights. And here we have one of the most deadly spree killings in Canadian history. So far, I believe 10 are dead. I think 18 wounded is the latest I'm hearing. We're recording this on Labor Day, so this is still very much a breaking and developing story. But two men in it appears to be like a Native American, the James Smith Cree Nation.
In Canada they call them First Peoples.
Okay,
but yes, it's basically the Canadian version of an Indian reservation.
Yes. And so, yeah, these two guys sounds like they've been kind of going door to door. It's like they're saying that there's like over 13 crime scenes. They believe some of the people were targeted. Some of the people were killed at random. But the weapon of choice was some sort of blading weapon because this is deemed a stabbing spree. And
and unlike most sprees that just sort of happen and they're done, this is practically cross country because last I heard, the police didn't know where they were going, and so they sent out alerts to the provinces on either side, basically going, we don't know, they might be headed there. And so this is the first, cross country stabbing that I have heard of. It reminds me of a lot of like the Bonnie and Clyde things, and they would be being chased by the police, but that involved gangsters and guns and whatever, and this involves knives, and this is the first I've ever heard of anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And so at the time of this recording, one of the suspects has been found dead from wounds that were not self-inflicted, according to the police. So it could be that the one of them killed the other one.
Considering that the one who's still alive has a criminal record and a history of violence,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know obviously I don't know what happened, but it kind of looks like maybe they had a disagreement. Maybe one of them said, hey, we're kind of out of control, and possibly his brother. Yeah, they're brothers. Yeah, and it may be that the more criminal of the two decided to stab his brother. Yeah, this is not a healthy person.
Again,
one of the things that they mentioned here is that, and rightly so, I can't really mock them, the Canadian government was telling people to shelter in place. When you've got, crazed murderers roaming around with knives, yeah, don't make yourself an easy target. Stay at home. But, it would be easier to defend yourself if you had a gun with you.
But also the according to the stories here, I mean, these guys are already being charged with the murders and the attempted murders, but also breaking and entering. So, yeah, you could shelter in place, but what happens when they break down your door or smash in your window? That was always one thing that got me, as people talked about, like, hey, you don't need a gun, get a security system. And but it's one of those like, okay, now the alarm goes off. Now what? Like, literally, my security system is literally there just to justify when I shoot somebody in my home, because, hey, they heard that loud alarm, and I'm gonna start flipping lights on. So they heard a loud alarm and the lights came on, so they knew they weren't alone, and they didn't immediately go out the way they came. I've got to assume they're up to no good. And so, yeah, this is one of those things of you can't ban your way out of this. And I mean, I wouldn't put it past Justin Trudeau, especially given how he's been rolling in Canada, to attempt to try to ban knives because of this. Of course, we don't know what kind of knife this was, whether it was a super duper scary zombie knife or whatever nonsense people want to say, or if it's a machete or a utility knife or something like that. But something tells me Canadians will be a little less agreeable towards turning in their knives as they have been about turning in their guns, and even they're not.
I mean, odds are really good that it's not a pocket knife, for crying out loud.
So, yeah, we shall see. But again, these are things that don't happen in any other country but the United States, and these are things that can only happen with the graces of an AR-15 and a 50-round drum magazine. So, yeah,
I don't understand the point you just made.
I'm just saying that the anti-gunners are always talking about the fact that we can.
Okay, you didn't use your sarcasm font. That's the problem.
I am sorry. This is only something that happens in the United States, and this is only something that can be done with an AR-15 and a 50-round drum magazine.
Thank you.
But we don't mean we are making fun of Canada, the Canadian government, and the idea that you could ban your way to safety. So Canadians, our hearts go out to you. We are so sorry for the deaths, and we're glad one of them's dead. Hopefully the other one gets caught. Hopefully he puts up a fight and gets dead as well, because we've learned from the spree killers that get captured alive that nothing good comes from that. So, hopefully this will end peacefully. And, it's been several hours since I've seen any new deaths updated. So it appears that they are still not actively killing, and hopefully that I'm not going to have to eat those words next week. But yeah, this is a absolutely serious event that's happened in Canada, and a warning to people everywhere on you start banning guns and suddenly now you can have a massive spree killing with two dudes with knives and a Nissan Rogue.
The argument is, of course, going to be made that if they had guns instead of knives, the death toll would be higher.
Yeah, tell that to the families.
I mean, I'm just saying what the argument's going to be.
That is my rebuttal to that anti-gun talking point. Well, speaking of anti-gun, there is rumbles in the jungle. This is a leak, so this is all rumored. This is potentially not going to be how things pan out, but the number of stuff that we've seen about the ATF and pistol braces, I would be very surprised if we don't start seeing this come to fruition. But there has been a leak of documents that note that the ATF is considering an amnesty period for pistols with pistol stabilizing braces. Number one, the bad news is this does appear that there may be a bump stock style ban on pistol stabilizing braces coming down the pipe. Which is enraging because, I mean, the amount of legal limbo that pistol stabilizing braces have gone through, from them being approved as a disability aid for people that may not have full use of their support arm for shooting things like AR-15 pistols, okay, you can't ever place it to your shoulder because if you do, you're breaking the law, to they're just completely illegal. You can't ever, get them anywhere near your shoulder, to, okay, you can shoulder it now and it's totally fine, to now it's a short barreled rifle instantly and you need a tax stamp. So, yeah.
Before we get into what I think of this, you have said, or perhaps you were quoting other people about, not necessarily that it was a good idea, but this would be a way in order to get a free tax stamp. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on that.
Well, that's that's the whole point on what this amnesty is going to be, because so previous, like the more recent amnesties, like the machine gun amnesties have been, there was a couple of times, I think one was like, I'm trying to remember when they were, but I'm not that big of a machine gun collector, but there was a couple of amnesties that went through that allowed people to register, to put machine guns into the registry that weren't registered in the proper fashion. And they would be paying the full tax stamp and all of that. In this case, you can register your pistol at any point in time. Like, you know, Ian McCallum from Forgotten Weapons, he's openly said he's concerned about pistol stabilizing braces becoming illegal. So whenever he gets a pistol configured, you know, rifle or whatever you want to call these, you know, AR and AK style pistols, whenever he gets one of those, he immediately just puts a stamp on it and puts a proper stock on the end of it, just to go the easier route as far as the law goes. And so the statement is, it's not like the registry is going to be closed. So I think this amnesty may, and some people talked about, may mean that the ATF may waive the $200 tax stamp for that. So in the event that you have something that could be accepting of a short barreled rifle stock, I believe they're specifically requesting like photographs and things like that. So if you have a full sized rifle that you would like to shorten the barrel on, that may not count for this amnesty. But if you're someone like Oddball who has has an MP5 pistol clone, this might be a time to put the proper stock on the end of it.
So here's my thought. I'm not at all encouraging any of our listeners to break the law, but I will state that I don't trust the ATF, and I don't see why you should either. Because we've mentioned in previous episodes, the ATF is overstepping its bounds, how it's showing up on people's doorsteps, demanding to see guns that they purchased, or, you know, wanting to see the fuel filters, making threats. And we've seen how the ATF has behaved in the past. And my thoughts on the matter are that if you take advantage of this amnesty, you are just making it easier for them to confiscate them later when they make them illegal. And while I'm not yet at the stage of willing to put money on that, I have a high confidence that that's going to be the next thing that happens. I know that some people will argue, well, if there's a tax stamp on it, then that's being regulated and so on and so forth. And that's not what happened with bump stocks. But, you know, well, like Weer'd said at the beginning, this is just being floated. We don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm speaking just for myself here. So they're going to say, well, this could happen, and then there's an amnesty, and then people register, and then the ATF could decide, you know what, we're not going to tax stamp them. We're going to declare them all illegal. So I'm very fortunate in that I don't have a pistol stabilizing brace, and if I had one, I would lie about it. And so in that regard, I'm fortunate that, so far as you know, I don't have to make that decision. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you to make your decision very carefully, because I don't trust the ATF at all. And so don't blindly go into this. Now, if you do your research and you decide that this is the best route, then go ahead, you have my blessing. But do your due diligence is really the point that I'm stressing here.
Yeah, totally. And this is also not all, you know, roses. It's not like getting a stamp on a gun is suddenly the magic cure all, because I certainly have known one application that I have heard for these pistol stabilizing braced affixed pistols is that it makes a really, really good trunk gun, in the fact that, hey, you're going to go traveling and all of that, and suddenly you find that, oh, there's riots. Oh, there's urban unrest. Oh, there's an invasion. I mean, whatever you have it, but suddenly you realize that it's gotten really, really hot in the area that you are, and you've got to get your way out of there. A brace affixed pistol is going to be both small enough to have it tucked in a bag or something somewhere that you could easily just transport it without it being too much of a problem, but suddenly having near carbine level firepower is absolutely, something that's good to have. And if suddenly you put a tax stamp on that, you cannot cross state lines without government approval. And so that would change really quickly going up to the lake house for the weekend and, throwing the braced AR or the braced AK in the trunk.
What's the reasoning behind that? That you have to get permission to cross the state lines? I
have no idea. Maybe it's just the fact that it's on a registry, so they need to know where it is. I honestly don't know, or it could just be because they can. That'll be something that I'll look up and ask around about, and maybe I'll report on that in the next show.
I've probably told this story by now, but it amuses me. So I have a friend who has a legitimate belt-fed machine gun, and he likes to take it to various, I don't know if you could call them a blog shoot, but you know what I mean. Because, well, if you've got a machine gun, you want to show that sucker off. And in order to do that, he has to fill out this form. And when you fill out this form, I've never seen it, but I'm told that one of the fields is basically, why do you want to do it? And he likes to put down, and I am not making this up, it's something along the lines of, because chicks dig full auto. And apparently that hasn't gotten him disqualified. I guess, and this makes sense, the government's more interested in the paper trail, really, than in, any sort of justification you have. I just think that's funny. Why are you doing it? Because the girls like it. All right, good for you.
What other reason is there? And yes, you have told that before, but guess what? I like hearing it.
Okay, good.
So yeah, this is something to keep our eyes out on, and honestly speaking, it's something to contact your representatives about, because this is something that ATF technically doesn't have the power to do any of this stuff.
Don't get me started.
Yep. Chevron deference. We've heard the Aaron rant and all that, and so one of the solutions for this is simply passing a law, and so. This could be something to float, especially if you've got some of those pro-gun firebrands out there that love to present pro-gun bills just to show how red, white, and blue their blood is. God bless them, and let's see. Maybe we could get a little spearhead in front of this potential ATF threat.
It was just, when you said, yeah, we've heard the Aaron rant, it's like, so now I imagine you thinking of me like a dog with a bone, just, arr, arr, arr. I'm giggly tonight. We'll
keep the gate shut, because otherwise Aaron will shake it until it's dead. So, last up, this is kind of an interesting note. This is not set in stone, but it was something that I thought about saying last week, and it slipped my mind at the time that we were getting ready to do the show. And so, but I wanted to talk about this. Is we actually got talking about the assault weapons ban when it went through. And of course it was sent through like dark of night. Most of the people were already on vacation. And so many of the representatives voted through proxies. It just passed by the skin of its teeth, and it passed by its skin of its teeth in the House. So the Senate is probably going to be a whole lot less, forthcoming towards this this bill, and clearly they haven't voted on it yet, which means that they're not in a hurry to vote on it because now they're in recess, and next thing you know, it's going to be the midterm elections, and they don't want to be messing around with that. But I got asking, like, why the heck are they doing this? They're going to all this trouble and doing this in the dark of night to float a bill that's just going to die in the Senate. And when Sean heard the show, Sean Sorrentino of Gun Blog Variety Task fame, the host emeritus, he said, "Oh, it's because Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney, they're playing a game of musical chairs because New York got redistricted with the census, and so now Jerry Nadler and Carolyn Maloney, there's only one seat for the two of them, and they were in a heated race." And so the primary race happened, and Nadler is part of the House Judiciary, is the head of the House Judiciary Committee, and so he was doing all the Judiciary Committee stuff. So a lot of the January 6th things and some of the Trump raids and things like that. That was his saber rattling. And Carolyn Maloney was the person who led the charge on this assault weapons ban, and so that was her attempt. And I would like to note that both are powerful, both are longtime serving incumbents, and Carolyn Maloney is currently out of a job. She will be leaving in January because Jerry Nadler has won the primary. So he still may not win, but let's face it, this is a super Democrat district, so he's almost a sure thing. And so he won over Carolyn Maloney, and I will note that Jerry Nadler has both a lot of health problems, and B, looks like a walking corpse. And so I was actually shocked to see that people would vote for somebody who is as vivacious as Jerry Nadler over Carolyn Maloney, who still appears to have blood in her veins. And
you mentioned that he was actually older than Joe Biden.
I don't know if he's older than Joe Biden, but let's just say I am not 100% certain that Joe Biden is going to make it to the end of this term, given all of his health problems. And I don't know if Jerry Nadler is going to fare that much better with all the issues that he's had. So yeah, it's just interesting. And being the gun nut that I am, I can't help but think, I wonder if it's just New Yorkers are just not that concerned with assault weapons bans. Certainly an issue. But speaking of assault weapons bans, in the hearing leading up to the House vote on the bill, the Brady Campaign sent one of their spokespeople to testify on Brady's support of the ban. And you just know this was ripe for a weird audio Fisk. So in the hearing leading up to the U.S. House passing their assault weapons ban that is destined for certain doom in the Senate after the November midterm elections, the Brady Campaign sent their senior legal counsel, director of racial justice, and co-host of the Brady Campaign podcast, Kelly Sampson. I think very few of you will be surprised to hear that it's almost 100% lies. So given that they are so thick on the ground, let's dive into it.
Thank you for holding this hearing, because Americans of all walks of life can and do agree that gun violence is a real problem.
Yes. Is she implying that some don't think it's a problem? We all want to reduce gun violence, and violence in general. The difference is our methods.
Gun violence is a leading cause of death for American children, which is a public health issue, not a private evil hearts problem. Indeed, no prevailing philosophy, theology, or world history suggests that evil is unique to the United States.
Compound lies. Below I have a link to the CDC data on deaths in America of all age groups, and it is not a leading cause of death at any age. It only becomes the second cause of death in the 15 to 24 age bracket, which happens to contain more adults than minors. And it is 3 times less than the leading cause of death in that bracket, which is unintentional injuries. And of course, evil is universal. To quote Jeff Cooper, an unarmed man can only flee from evil, and fleeing from evil will never defeat it.
What is unique, however, especially in comparison to peer countries, is the rate at which gun violence kills our people. And that isn't because we're more evil, more prone to mental health diagnoses, or more violent.
Especially when compared to peer countries. And by peers, she means countries with less gun violence than the United States. Those same peer countries have just as much homicide and violent crime, but somehow, without the guns, it becomes different. And the countless countries with more gun deaths than the United States will be ignored. Further, let's not ignore that countries like Ukraine and Taiwan are currently under invasion. If while unarmed you can only flee from evil, where do you flee when evil wants your home?
First, a mental health diagnosis makes someone more likely to be a victim of violence rather than a perpetrator. And in any case, research shows that Americans are no more prone to mental health issues than people around the world. Second, research suggests that America isn't necessarily more violent than our peers, but because guns are so readily available, we are decidedly deadlier.
Mental health experts have agreed that mental health evaluations are useless predictors of spree killers. As for the U.S. being more deadly, we just talked about a spree killing in Montenegro, and now the mass stabbing in Canada. And there have been 2 serious killings in Norway this year, and Denmark is home to one of the deadliest spree killings not conducted by a state government. So yes, we have deadly shootings in the United States. But no, this isn't a uniquely American phenomenon, especially when you consider the size of the United States.
When it comes to gun violence, we're quite literally off the charts. That's why countries like Australia, Canada, and Germany warn their citizens to take extra precautions when traveling here. And that's also why hundreds of families will get the dreaded news that their loved one has been shot today.
And when was the last time a German or an Australian was shot and killed while visiting the U.S.? Overall, the people who are called about a loved one being shot and killed are A, people who have chosen the path of suicide, and B, people involved in gangs or the drug trade. Germans and Australians should be about as worried about being shot in America as I should be worried about being shot or stabbed in Australia or gang raped in Germany. Sure, events like these happen, but they're rare, and focusing on them is pure political propaganda.
But gun violence is a public health problem, and it requires public policy solutions.
This is code talk for saying that the anti-gun lobbying groups want CDC money so they can have their pet scientists like Arthur Kellerman and Garen Wintermute write anti-gun junk studies on the public dime. Hey, aunties, Michael Bloomberg bought the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health so you guys can make your public health anti-gun propaganda without needing to sidestep government regulations.
We have a gun violence problem unlike any other industrialized country on Earth. And guns don't just come from the sky.
The bigger question is, why do non-industrial countries have much worse gun violence issues, since guns just don't come from the sky? If we aren't addressing this, then any solution proposed is doomed to fail.
Those opposed to regulation claim that people who want to get guns to commit crime could circumvent gun laws by going to the black market, as though the black market were a given. But it's not. Loopholes combined with the lack of accountability and unlawful, irresponsible, and negligent gun industry practices feed the black market.
Do they? Because that doesn't explain why countries like Brazil, Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, and Venezuela have such bad gun violence issues when they have virtually no gun industry in their country and oppressive gun regulations.
Almost all guns start in licensed manufacturers' factories. Generally, manufacturers sell to distributors who sell to dealers who sell to the public. Dealers are supposed to screen for gun trafficking, and most do. The majority of gun dealers won't sell a single crime gun in a given year. But the most recently available data shows that 5% of licensed dealers sell about 90% of crime guns.
This is a propaganda point that just makes zero sense. If a small number of gun dealers were just fronts for criminal enterprises, and the ATF knows this, why wouldn't they simply throw the bulk of their resources at the bad apples and get them shut down? Especially since it seems that all the other FFLs can be trusted with minimal supervision. Also, in a recent episode of the Gun Owners Action League podcast, my friend Jim Finnerty talked about becoming an FFL in Massachusetts. It's a good podcast. Even if you're not in Mass, as much of the information is about federal law. But Jim notes that if you're sloppy with paperwork or pick up a minor violation, the ATF will start inspecting your premises annually until you straighten up and fly right, or they find grounds to shut you down. The fact that the ATF isn't shutting down these quote-unquote bad apples is either because A, they're doing nothing wrong and they're just victims of circumstance, or B, the ATF is completely incompetent. Either way, this isn't the point that Ms. Sampson is trying to make.
And you might be asking what manufacturers have to do with that. A lot. Through trace data from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the ATF, manufacturers know which dealers and distributors are routinely selling crime guns.
Wait, what? The manufacturers and distributors also have valid FFLs on file. Brady is now running a smear campaign. Label a gun dealer as a bad apple, despite them doing nothing that would warrant revoking their license, even under the massive spike of FFL revocations over minor violations in recent years, and then demanding that manufacturers and wholesalers simply stop supplying them with goods, which would effectively drive them out of business. Again, another example of how they don't care about safety or the law. They just want to destroy the gun industry.
Despite manufacturers' role in supplying the black market, they face little accountability for a couple key reasons. First, they've lobbied to undercut the ATF.
I wonder why. You just said since the ATF allegedly isn't shutting down all these bad apple dealers who are knowingly selling guns to criminals, now gun makers themselves must do the ATF's job for them? Well, if that's the case, why do we need an ATF?
Second, they've bought themselves a shield in the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, also called PLACA, a law that makes it much harder for those harmed by industry misconduct to get justice.
They didn't buy themselves a shield. You bought them a shield. Quite literally. The Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act was enacted after the Brady Campaign, working with the Clinton White House, sued gun makers for the criminal use of their products. Not a single case was won, but some companies settled and others were dismissed, but the legal expenses were much higher for the gun makers than the anti-gunners with their frivolous lawsuits. The plan was never to win, but to bankrupt the gun industry. So because of this, Congress expressly made it illegal to sue gun companies for the actions of criminals. And no, Kelly, PLCAA does not cover industry misconduct. So if there was such behavior, they could be sued. But like bad apple gun dealers, this is a myth that only exists in the lies of the anti-gun corporate lobbyists.
This more guns, less crime frame isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. First, we know that states with looser gun laws have more crime.
Nope. The safest state in America from 1st to 10th are New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey, Vermont, Connecticut, Idaho, Wyoming, Rhode Island, Virginia, and Massachusetts. Now, while New Jersey and Connecticut are very unfriendly to gun owners, and Massachusetts and California are tied for the most unfriendly gun states, 6 of those 10 are constitutional carry states. New Hampshire is hands down the most gun-friendly state in the nation, though Wyoming and Maine are among many others that are close behind it. And of course, Virginia, while not yet passing constitutional carry, is still very gun-friendly, despite huge amounts of anti-gun lobbying in the state. I certainly think we'll see constitutional carry there before we see magazine or assault weapons bans. Oh, and New York is number 17, likely with huge help from the massive expanse of the state that is rural farm country. And California is number 36, despite its own massive expanses of rural farm country, and being one of the most gun-unfriendly states in the nation. Maryland, despite being right next to number 5 Virginia, is 31 on the list. And while gun-friendly Pennsylvania and West Virginia, who also border Maryland, are 15th and 12th respectively. All of that was to say, no, Kelly, there is no evidence that says gun-friendly states are more dangerous. And I would argue just the opposite is true.
Secondly, framing guns around good and bad guys isn't neutral. Because of the racial inequities in our society, good guy with a gun is usually code for white, resulting in disparate treatment for black gun owners. For example, police shot and killed Philando Castile, a black licensed concealed carry permit holder during a traffic stop, whereas police were peacefully able to take an armed white man into custody who'd fled after shooting and killing 7 people at a July 4th parade in Highland Park.
I have no idea where this good guy is code word for white comes from. She cites the horrible killing of Philando Castile, and while the officer was acquitted for all wrongdoing, claiming that he thought Castile was reaching for his gun, I still don't think justice was served. And yes, the Hyde Park killer was taken peacefully because they didn't fight with the cops when they were arrested. Still, these stories are just anecdotes. Check the show notes. I have a news story from Detroit where a legally armed black man shot at a spree killer and wasn't charged. The killer was also black and was taken alive by the police. Further, I have a news story about a white man in Colorado who shot and killed a spree killer and was later shot by the police. His family is suing the police for the wrongful death of John Hurley. That's the name of the hero who stopped that spree killing. So yeah, there are 3 stories that show just what Miss Sampson is claiming is false. Now, did I disprove that there's a bias against African Americans when it comes to police and defensive gun use? No, but neither does Miss Sampson prove that it exists, because anecdotes are not data.
Further, some manufacturers use militaristic marketing, suggesting that assault-style rifles are the way to protect freedom. But as I've detailed in my written testimony, freedom in the firearms context is linked to a distorted view of the Second Amendment that falsely claims that people have the right to take up arms against the government.
Citation needed. I read gun magazines, and my browser windows are filled with gun ads when I'm surfing the web. And I don't ever see militaristic marketing, but I'm sure Kelly sees it all the time. But how stupid do you have to be to think the founding fathers wouldn't consider taking up arms against the government to not be part of the Second Amendment? You do realize that George Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, John Hancock, Ben Franklin, et al., plus the entire Continental Army, as well as the state militias, were all subjects to the British Crown at the time of the Revolution? Funny that they had to take up arms against their own government and were enshrining the right to keep and bear arms in the U.S. Constitution, but of course not to take up arms against the government. But yet they seem to have forgotten to write any words about that part. Or maybe, as I said at the top, this testimony is all lies.
This insurrectionist interpretation is particularly seductive to extremists, and it threatened this very body on January 6th.
Wait, what? What does the January 6th protest have to do with the Second Amendment? The only people to have guns that day were the Capitol Police and the Secret Service, and the only people killed were unarmed. I'm not going to state my opinions on the events of January 6th, but it is very clear that nothing that happened that day pertained to the Second Amendment. But the political aftermath of January 6th has been a rallying cry for the Democrats who supported this assault weapons ban. So this controversial bloody shirt must be waved, I guess, as Kelly Sampson preaches to the choir. Those are your anti-gun talking points and a few rebuttals to combat them.
Well, that was certainly a thing. Again, it's been a while since I've said this. I don't know how you were able to sit through this. I would be chewing through the restraints and, throwing things at walls. It's almost an allergic reaction at this point when I hear some of these things. It's like, no, you're wrong. Apologize to that tree. You're wasting the air it made.
I mean, honestly speaking, my reaction is very similar to, like, today, as I said, my daughter had a tough day. She was just in this like super melancholy, melodramatic meltdown where she was just crying and just going on and on about all the woes of her life. And they really weren't that compelling. And she was like, head was buried in a pillow. And I was just doing everything I could to bite my tongue, not just to laugh at how just adorable it was that this was just the horrors of her life. And that's the same thing. It's just oh my God, she thinks people are going to believe this. Oh, especially with that bit about when I was listening to that podcast and I'm like, are you serious? That's the first I'd ever heard that if there's like kind of like a little blacklist that you could get for or demerits that you can get with the ATF, that if you have some paperwork violations, the ATF will come more regularly just to make sure that's just an anomaly. And so the statement about like all these bad apple gun dealers, and it's one of those like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like if the ATF knows these gun dealers are selling to crime guns, why aren't they shutting them down? Because they're not bad apples. And then furthermore, if they were bad apples, they would have so many ATF agents on them just from natural causes. But these are the lies they tell. the truth isn't going to do them any good, so they have to resort to lies.
So we're going to pivot from lies to, I don't know if you can call this incompetence or deliberate malfeasance, but David is going to talk about the new New York training requirements, and I'm just going to preemptively say, fudge, New York.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. Weer'd requested I do a segment on the new pistol permit training requirements the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, DCJS, has come up with following the NYSERPA v. Bruin Supreme Court case. I'll be focusing only on changes to the pistol permit training process in this segment because A, they just came out, B, I couldn't cover all the updated firearm laws from New York even if I took an entire episode, and C, I'm only willing to risk my blood pressure so much. Just to be clear, I am doing this segment under duress, in part due to these restrictions flying in the face of the clear words of NYSERPA v. Bruin, and also because by the time this segment airs, I'll be in New York City, and therefore completely disarmed by the rules of that totalitarian state. Moving on. While relatively short at just under 4 pages, the new training requirements make up for that in weight. The document starts with a section on purpose, authority, and scope. It references New York Executive Law Section 837, paragraph 23A and 3251, which read, in conjunction with the superintendent of the state police, promulgate policies and procedures with regard to standardization of firearms safety training required under subdivision 19 of section 400 of the penal law, which shall include the approval of course materials and promulgation of proficiency standards for live fire training. They obviously really like the word promulgation. This is followed by a reference to section 265, paragraph 19, which defines duly authorized instructors under New York law. The introductory section also allows the licensing officer to give credit to any applicants who completed a firearm safety training course within 5 years prior to September 1st, 2022. How kind of them. The next portion is titled Minimum Standards for Classroom Training Curriculum. This is where the velvet gloves come off. It states that concealed carry firearm training must include 16 hours of live in-person classroom instruction conducted by a duly authorized instructor. At this time, there's no word on training cost, but I'm sure it won't be reasonable. Applicants, therefore, will have to take at least 2 days off from work and pay an additional undisclosed fee in order to merely apply for a handgun license. Once again, gun control laws target people at the lower levels of the economic scale. Topics in this class must include general firearm safety, 2 hours minimum, firearm safe storage requirements, 1 hour minimum, state and federal gun laws, 2 hours minimum, concealed carry situational awareness, including firearm display and concealment, conflict de-escalation, including verbal and nonverbal strategies, adverse effect of alcohol and drug use, best practices when encountering law enforcement, the list of sensitive places and restricted places, conflict management, the use of deadly force including when it may be justified and when there is a duty to retreat, suicide prevention including recognizing signs of suicide risk, basic principles of marksmanship. Many of these topics are fairly standard for permit classes around the country. However, requiring 16 hours to cover them is certainly excessive. I cover nearly all those topics in the 8-hour handgun permit class here in Tennessee, which is considered overly long. By the way, that 8 hours includes the written test and live fire portions, which we haven't even gotten to yet. After the classroom portion is over, it's followed by the written test with a minimum score of 80% to pass. Interestingly, this document also states that the instructors may be required to develop the tests themselves, but gives no guidance on length or number of questions. Next is 2 hours of live fire training. There is currently no word on whether any live ammunition will actually be fired during this part of the class. The topics covered here are general range safety, safe drawing, target acquisition and reholstering, dry firing, safe loading and unloading of ammunition, performing a firearm condition check and how to achieve and verify a safe and empty firearm condition, safely discharging the firearm. Again, these are things I cover in the classroom portion of the Tennessee Enhanced Permit class in a fraction of the time. Finally, we get to the live fire proficiency assessment. In addition to demonstrating safe handling of a firearm, this portion also includes the minimum accuracy standard. The applicant must fire 5 rounds from a standing position at a distance of 4 yards into a 25.5 by 11-inch target. At least 4 of the 5 rounds must be on target. That's an interesting target size and not a standard one. In effect, the target is 3 pieces of letter-sized paper lined up by their long edges. More proof, if it was needed, that the people writing these requirements know very little about actual use of a firearm. Also, 4 out of 5 rounds on the paper from 4 yards? I know people who could literally do that blindfolded. So props to New York for not requiring Olympic levels of accuracy from its victims, applicants. It wraps up by stating instructors have to retain records of these assessments for at least 5 years and must make them available to the licensing officer on request. Remember, this is just the training element to qualify for a license to carry in New York. It doesn't include all the other expenses and hoops needed to complete the process. For example, while proper cause is out, good moral character is in. A phrase, by the way, that would be very familiar to the Southern Democrats who pushed through various Jim Crow laws following the Civil War. Remember I mentioned that list of sensitive and restricted places in the classroom portion? That's been considerably expanded by recent laws. When reporters asked Governor Hochul where licensees would be allowed to carry their guns under the new restrictions, she famously responded, probably some streets. Also, an interesting aspect that I've not seen addressed is that in New York State, it is illegal for anyone over the age of 21 to even so much as touch a handgun if they don't have a handgun license. Yet the handgun license application process now requires live fire. Draw your own conclusions. So there you have it. New York once again bending its subject over with no lube and without even a cigarette after, for what they claim is public safety, but we all know is really about control.
The once great city of New York becomes the one maximum security prison for the entire country.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me, or suggestions for future segments, or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm also a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brenna Bock. That's BRENABOCK. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
What are they thinking they're going to do? I mean, obviously, the whole point of this training is punishment. This is not about safety, because you can't mandate safety. You can mandate classes and all that, but if you force someone to do it, they're going to force people who aren't interested in doing it to do it. And so, like, this training is crap. And all I was thinking about is, think about all of these like YouTube videos that you see or read stories about cops shooting themselves, reholstering their gun, or having a negligent discharge, either at the range or all of that, or leaving their gun in a restroom and things like that. And these guys are qualifying at least once a year, if not twice. And so the mandatory training is just not going to be any good, because unless you practice regularly, those skills are going to perish. If you're American, think about the foreign language that you took in high school. Can you still speak any of it? Maybe if you live in the Southwest and you took Spanish, yeah, maybe your Spanish is still good. But I took French, and that's gone. That is absolutely gone. I did take Latin, and then I became a biologist. So actually, my Latin is still pretty darn good, but I can't conjugate a verb to save my life. It's all just vocabulary.
I took 4 years of Spanish, 2 in high school, 2 in college. I can use very, very little of it. I can understand it hearing, and to a lesser degree reading, better than I can speak it. There's a certain amount of, okay, I kind of get where this is going. But if you plopped me in a Spanish city and I needed to find my way to a hotel, and of course I didn't have a phone,
But you could find your way to the library.
¿Dónde está es la biblioteca? Yes, I could.
I don't know why that's the universal phrase in every foreign language classes. How do I get to the library?
Okay, you will probably find this adorable because you're a dad. When we moved to Germany in the early 1980s, I was like 6 years old at the time, and I wanted to impress my mother by learning some German, and I learned some. And I went and I told it to her, and she was the appropriate amount of proud, but also laughed. And so what I said to her, and this is proper grammar, it's not wrong. What I said was, "Du bist ein Bahnhof." Pause for the German speakers to laugh. What that means, Weer'd, is you are a train station.
What were you trying to say?
I think I was trying to ask where is the train station, and don't ask me what that is because I don't remember if I ever knew. But
well, you didn't have to ask because you could just go to your mother because she's a train station.
But the point was, I was 6 years old. That's my defense. But yeah, I'm not sure I could do terribly better in Spanish as an adult.
Yeah, so that's how good training works. If it's just mandated. Another thing that popped in my head that ties in very, very nicely with the Weer'd audio Fisk is Kelly Sampson had that whole bit about somehow good guy is a code word for white person. I wonder if she got that the good guy confused with good character. Because boy, that is something that I was hearing when Dave is talking about the good character, and there's rumblings. I haven't seen how it's going to work out, but there's rumblings that Massachusetts is going to switch over to good character instead of just since now we can't do just a standard May issue. And let's just say, look at the towns where you can easily get a gun permit in Massachusetts, and look at the towns where you can't, and then look at the demographics.
And I'm reasonably certain that if that happens, and it probably will, that it's going to make it up to SCOTUS again. And if it happens in Clarence Thomas's lifetime, he's going to be mad because it's going to be, first of all, did I stutter? And secondly, the fact that the whole good character clause is rooted in Jim Crow to begin with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's going to take out his baseball bat and beat the crap out of good character and probably get rid of things like, North Carolina's pistol purchase permit, which does require permission from the local police chief due to the good character clause. So there's a certain amount of me that's going, bring it, because of, after it wins its way through court, it'll knock down a lot of really bad, really racist things.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, it's already been filed. NYSERPA versus Bruin 2, the sequel that is literally saying just that. And it is going after these training requirements and good character because, it's going after all of this because this is all a knee-jerk reaction of, well, we can't let poor people and black people carry guns in New York City. And so, so NYSERPA is going right at it. And they're, of course, citing the original NYSERPA versus Bruin and saying, Clarence didn't stutter. And so I'm hoping, though, again, New York they know they're flying in the face of the Supreme Court and the U.S. Constitution at this point in time. There's no debating it. And so I'm hoping that they will understand when they've got it bad, but so maybe a lower court will just simply rule that this is totally against the law and totally unconstitutional, and destroy it sooner rather than waiting for us to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So. Yeah, here's to NYSERPA, and oh my God, what a great organization you guys are. So pivoting over from anti-gun actions to anti-gun talking points, we hear it all the time. We register cars. Why not register guns? And Xander gives us his independent thoughts on why this is such a fallacy.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. Anti-gunners often talk about how guns should be regulated like cars for safety. A recent event showed how false that statement is. Cars have their serial numbers registered with the state for two things: to ensure that the vehicle's owner pays the taxes on that vehicle in the form of license plates and inspections, and to identify the current registered owner of a vehicle once it is in control of the police, whether stopped at the side of the road or in an impound lot. This does not prevent misuse, abuse, theft, or death by vehicles. A few weeks ago, several people in Muskegon, Michigan were injured when the driver of a car fled from police, eventually striking two vehicles. One, I was informed by the husband of one victim, had the engine block broken in two from the force of the impact. In Michigan, handguns are to be registered with the state police. The incident that sparked the high-speed chase was someone taking shots at said police officers. As it happens, the suspect has not been located yet several weeks later, or at least it certainly hasn't been referenced and cross-linked in the news, despite the very thing the anti-gunners say will prevent this from happening. There are only two things registered firearms are good for: wrapping up the paperwork in a pretty bow after the case is otherwise closed, and a checklist for the government to go door to door and confiscate firearms. See also recent ATF harassment of lawful gun owners who had literally just passed a background check and had no cause to give others call the cops concern. To end on a positive note, the wife of my coworker is recovering well. Have fun, be safe, I hope I gave you something to think about. Now, Weer'd, you have two jobs. Clean the audio up and include the link in the show notes.
So, may I point out that more people are killed by cars in America accidentally than killed with guns on purpose. The number of accidental deaths with firearms is so small that it could be approximated as 0 annually. But meanwhile, when it comes to two cars hitting each other, we call those by nature accidents. And so cars are by far more deadly than guns, which also on a practical level, for those that you carry a gun, don't be so fixed in the mindset that, oh, when danger comes, I'm going to draw my gun and shoot it. If you're in a car, you can both run a person down, which is far more deadly than whatever the heck you're carrying in your holster, but also that will also work to get you away. So don't forget to use the car as a weapon, because boy, they can be very effective.
Okay, I'm going to get nerdy here. Big surprise. So during the David Tennant run of Doctor Who, there was a great episode, and it's the one where he connects with Sarah Jane and he meets up with K9, that's the letter K-9, who is a robot dog from a much earlier incarnation of Doctor Who. And cutting it very short, you've got the comic relief sidekick who's outside with the robot dog, and there's stuff going on inside, and he can't get into the building. And so the guy, Mickey, says, all right, K9, what do we do? You are in a car. Okay, but can you make a laser beam and bust down the doors? You are in a car. Can you make a bomb? Can you... and K9, for whatever reason, doesn't elaborate, just says, the unspoken thing is, dumbass, you're in a car. And it takes Mickey several minutes to realize, right, being in a car means I'm in control of several tons that can move very fast. And then he backed the car up and he stomped on the accelerator and drove through the doors. And so that's one of the things that stuck in my mind, and I hope I don't forget it in a situation like that. I'll have K9 in my head going, you're in a car, use it, dumbass.
And to close this out, I just want to say that, like, as for registration of guns, I've said this a million times before. Like, think of a single crime where a firearm registry was used to catch a criminal. Like, at best, they use it to return the gun to the rightful owner. But most of the time, it's just used for confiscation when that happens. And so, yeah, the registrations are not your friend. They are not worthwhile. Write your gun and serial numbers down and keep them in a secure file, and that's all you need. And you know what else we need, Aaron?
We need to thank our listeners, Weer'd.
That's right. Thank you so much for listening. Otherwise, we'd just be talking to ourselves. Well, we do that a lot.
You do anyway.
I mean, I am home all alone very, very often, and there's still lots of conversations going on. That's how Weird Beard rolls. But thank you so much to all of you who are listening. And of course, I always have to have a very special thanks to all of our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers Podcast to sign up. And you can get yourself an early release of the podcast, plus there's bonus content. That's the juice. There's the blooper reels, there's the ACP film track, and there's the ACP mag dump.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off. We should probably have them rate us on places other than Apple Podcasts, but that's what it says, so that's what I read.
I don't know where else you do rate us. Yeah, rate us on Stitcher. I don't know. I see the Apple Podcast ratings. I don't actually see them personally because Apple won't let me in, and I'm not installing their crappy software. But yes, I've got a blog. It's called WeirdWorld.com, and I'm on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network. It's trash. Don't listen to it.
I mean, Ryan Michad's nice, but that other guy, I hate him.
His co-host is an idiot.
Oh, terrible.
Stop talking about recipes and drinks and talk about handguns.
And he loves 1911s and revolvers, too. What the heck?
You.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.e/Aaron Paulette. All one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
So Weird would podcast even if no one listened, and I usually end up reciting, and I usually end up, it's not reciting, it's not, rehearsing. Rehearsing is the word. And I end up rehearsing conversations that don't happen while I'm taking a shower. Our conversational pathologies are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.